Welcome to the BP Leadership Podcast, where real leaders are made. I'm your host, Bill Purvis, and I'm excited about sharing with you today because I've got my guest with me, Victoria Nicholson. Victoria has been a singer and actress in some things like Chicago and Guys and Dolls and A Chorus Line, Newsbeat, and a number of other things. She's full of energy and highly passionate about what she does in the acting and drama area that she's in life. And today we're going to pick right up and talk with her again about some of the things like, I think today we're going to talk about some of the parts about getting into character, how you do that, your trades and the skills that you learn, how they work both on stage and off, and basically how you just press through. When you don't know how to do something, how you press through until you accomplish that. So I'm excited about that. Let's get started right back up and resume with our conversation right here with Victoria. Now, let me ask you this, because this will be the hard part for me. When you have to memorize lines, when you've got all these lines and you say, I look at that sometimes and say, how in the world does somebody who's doing acting memorize those kind of lines?
Right.
And so are there any tips? What do you do with that?
I wish I had the secret formula for memorizing lines. It's definitely difficult, but I like to start personally with reading through the whole script. Mm-hmm. I like to read through the whole script and kind of get a feel for the character that I'll be playing.
Right.
What their motive is,
Mm-hmm.
what they want out of the
Okay.
show,
Right.
Who they are,
Mm-hmm.
what their relationships are with the people that they're having conversations with.
Right.
Find out the importance of that character,
Okay.
and also find out where the change comes for the character, because in a lot of stories, especially lead stories, there's a journey that the character goes on. Okay. And there's a journey that the character will take you through.
Right.
And for me, I want to always make sure that whatever character I play, I take the audience on this journey to see the change in the character, whether that's finding their prince at the end,
Right.
or making a big successful discovery. Whatever it is, I want to make sure that we start somewhere and then we end somewhere, because I think that's so true with life.
It is.
And that's
it
what
is.
makes the performance honest
That's
and real.
Right. Yeah.
Is making sure that, because not all good stories start with the happily ever after.
Yeah,
You got to
right.
get through the
That's right.
conflicts and all the things. But as far as that goes, and then I like to scale back with my lines and start just a line at a time. I look at one scene at a time after I kind of have a grasp of the character.
Right.
I take the first scene and I'll see who comes before me and who comes after me. Mm-hmm. And it always helps me to look at the line before me and after me and my line and kind of go through it mentally of, okay, if this person says this, well, that's going to trigger me to then say what?
Right.
And then I go into my line
Right.
and I say, okay, and then that would make somebody else say this. And I kind of have to go through it line by line. And if possible, I like to get with whoever the scene partner is or the person in the scene and say, hey, let's run lines and try to make it more conversational.
Right.
And get yourself in the place of the character.
Yeah.
To kind of say, this would trigger me to say this or do this.
Yes.
Or react this way. And
I could see.
take it piece by piece.
Yeah, so basically the hardest part I would think is one would be getting into that character. That's a lot of work. I'll come back to that. But the other is by nature, we have our own words that we use.
Right.
And these are words that a writer has written for us that I've got to say and feel his response instead of mine. Mm-hmm. Is that a hard part for you to do?
That can definitely be challenging, especially when you're doing shows that are from different decades or different time periods.
Right.
That can be really difficult because the way that we respond now is a lot different than somebody would respond back in 1970.
That's true.
So it's really difficult to try to, like you said, remove Victoria from the script and say, I'm no longer Victoria during this contract.
Right.
I am whatever character I'm playing.
Wow.
And I need to kind of channel myself to respond a certain way and to really dive into that.
So how deep do you get into being that character? I mean, the deeper the better, I would think.
Absolutely, absolutely. I try to get pretty deep in the character. However, I still want it to be natural every night when we go on stage.
Right.
But I know, like, for example, when we did Newsies at the Springer Opera House and I played Catherine Plummer, in that show, she is a very strong-willed, strong-headed reporter who has been overlooked because during this time period, women were not seen as being able to publish work in the New York Times.
Right.
and she wanted to publish some hard-hitting news.
Yeah.
And her father owned one of the largest printing presses in New York, and he would not give her an opportunity. And so I kind of have to sit back and say, okay, let me put this into my own situation.
Yeah.
If this was something that I really wanted to do and my father was keeping me from this, how would I feel?
Yeah.
And really try to find those personal things that kind of give me those pinches in my own life, and be able to see how I can relate that to Catherine. And so that's really cool to see, and I relate to Catherine a lot in terms of really wanting to reach a goal and willing to just work super hard to get to it.
Yeah, I could see it. So what you're doing is you're tapping into your real feelings and your real emotions while being the character of this other person. And I would guess you're good if you walk out of the scene and you're still acting like that person.
Oh, absolutely.
That's when you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we had a night like that during Newsies when we had finally blocked this one scene where Catherine just chews out Jack on the rooftop. She's just letting him have it because he was not standing up for the boys. And I took that so offensively that when we left rehearsal, I was still mad at Ethan. And I was like, why are you mad at him? You have no reason to be mad. You're mad at the character. You're not mad at him. So sometimes it can get you like that.
I can see that. I know you're going to go a long ways. I've learned so much from you just watching and observing. I promise you, I've said, this girl knows how to communicate. You're going to go far. There's no lid on you.
Thank you.
You mentioned Ethan a moment ago.
Yes.
Let's talk about him for a minute. Ethan is the guy that you're about to be married to.
Yes,
that
sir.
Y'all met, and he's also an actor. Tell me how you met.
He is. So Ethan and I actually met at the Springer Opera House here in Columbus. We actually first met in December of 2015.
Okay.
We did Beauty and the Beast together. He played LeFou, Gaston's sidekick.
Okay, yeah.
And I played a silly girl. And we met during that process, didn't know each other very well. He had just started at Columbus State University. He was from out of town. And so we met during that show, and I remember being like, that's a cool guy. He's really great at his craft. He's really great at what he does. We were both dating different people at the time. And then we just kind of remained acquaintances. We saw each other here and there. I would see some of his shows at Columbus State. And then we did Grease together back in April of 2017.
Okay.
We did Grease together, and he played one of the greasers, and I played Patty Simcox, and so that was really fun.
That would have to be. Yeah.
It was great to meet him, but once again, I always had an admiration for his work ethic and for how hard he worked in the rehearsal room, and he just was kind to everybody. So that always stuck out to me. And then during Newsies, I actually got a call from him, and during the summer of 2017, and he said, hey, I heard that you got a call back for Catherine. He said, I got a call back for Jack. And I said, no way. So that means we'll have to read together. And then shortly later, we got an email saying, hey, we want you both to come in and read for the love interest of each other to play opposites in Newsies. We want to audition y'all together. So we both had never had a lead in this caliber before for a regional theater, and so we were so excited. Yeah. And so we would, call each other and text each other, are you nervous? I'm freaking out. So that was fun to be able to share that. And then we went into the audition room and did the audition, and it went really well. And then later on, we found out that we got the parts. And so we were beyond excited because we were one of the youngest people to be able to be leads in the Christmas show. So we could not believe it. We were super excited. Cool. And then after that, I had just recently gotten out of a relationship, and he was not in one at the time. And during the show process, towards the end of the show, flowers were showing up on my doorstep at home. And I was like, I'm not really interested. I'm sorry. I just got out of a relationship. I'm so sorry, but you're a good friend. But I just kept pushing him to the side and was focused on the show, and he just kept sending flowers. And then I'd go to the theater, and there'd be flowers in my dressing room. Wow. And I just thought, man, this guy's persistent. Yes. I said, all right, we can go to dinner one night, and then the rest is history. So
I love it. Y'all look good together. He's a good-looking guy.
Thank you.
Obviously, he's a good actor, too.
He is.
Now, do y'all help each other and give each other tips?
Oh, absolutely. Ethan went to school. He has a BFA in theater performance, and I do not. So that was something that was really beneficial for me because since I didn't go to school for this, I've had to learn all of this by watching.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that I'm still learning how to do because in school you learn how to find monologues, you learn what your type is, you get to take acting classes and dance classes and voice lessons. Yeah. And I did not have that luxury. Since,
you took, was it marketing?
Communications, yes. Public relations and communications is my degree. And so I remember thinking when I started college, my parents wanted me to get that, and they said, you can still do theater, but we want you to get a Plan B degree.
Right, that's right.
And I'm so thankful they made me do that.
That's right.
But I remember thinking, well, my shot at performing is over. I'm not going to be able to perform. And during a chorus line, since I was the youngest one in the cast, by 2 to 3 years, all of the other people, for the most part, were professionals from out of town. And I remember watching them and learning from them and from what they did and how they came into the rehearsal room and asking them for advice and feedback and being like, can I run my audition by you? What do you think? What can I tweak? And really thinking to myself, all right, if I want this bad enough, you're going to have to learn it on your own.
Yes.
And you're going to have to learn from the people around you.
Yep.
And luckily for me, Ethan, having had all this training, I can now piggyback this stuff off of him and be like, okay, help me find a monologue. How do you do that? How do you go about it? Does my resume look up to date? So it's really nice that he's there to help because a lot of people are very willing to help you in the business, but there's some that are not.
Right, that's right. They're protective, I'm
exactly.
Yep.
So I'm very thankful that he has all the knowledge that he has, and he's so talented, and he's so incredible at what he does. So to be able to learn from him is really special.
Well, he's blessed to have you. I promise you that, Victoria. And,
thank you.
And the thing is, too, part of that, sometimes we look at it as a weakness. We'll say, I didn't get my specific training in this, but I'm in this. You almost work harder because of that. Right. Because of your fear of failure.
Absolutely.
I knew a guy one time that he didn't have a degree in the field he was working in, but he was the hardest working guy. And I said, man, you work circles around anybody I know. And he said, I always feel I have to. And he said, I feel like for some reason that they've got the edge on me because they got their degree in that field. So he said, so I work twice as hard just to earn my place at the table. And he really didn't have to. He was already there.
Absolutely.
But that was for him a good leverage. And
yes.
All right, now let me ask you. Recently, you did Chicago.
Yes,
that was a big one. That was a good one.
It was great. It was an incredible show, and I did that one here at the Springer Opera House as well in Columbus, Georgia. And it was such a privilege to be able to do that show because it's such an iconic show. Yeah. Doing some original Bob Fosse choreography and being able to learn that style of dance was really cool. So it was a really fun show. We enjoyed it.
Now, what's the one you loved the most? If you could go back, you say, I had fun at.
It would probably be Newsies. That show, the cast was incredible. The camaraderie between all the boys and the story is so important. Yeah. About overcoming adversity and fighting for what you really want and not being afraid of it. And I think that show, it was so fun too because that show I had to learn how to tap dance for that show.
Oh, really?
Which I had never done before.
No.
And Catherine is known for her tapping. So
How long did it take you to pick that up?
Well, when the director originally offered me the contract, he said, we're willing to offer you Catherine. And, of course, I was crying. And he goes, but there's one condition. You need to get in tap lessons as soon as possible. And I said, okay. And that was the one area of dance that I never did. Yeah. So I said, okay, I will. So I started at a local dance studio, and I was in class with a bunch of little kids that were just tapping up a storm, and I'm like, I can't do a shuffle. So it was a very humbling experience to be able to be in there with these insanely talented 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
And
oh gosh.
Being 21 at the time, I was like, oh no. But it took me a long time, and I'm still working on it. I'm nowhere near a master at that by any means, but learning that. But it's funny to look back because every single show I've done, I've been thrown a new curveball to learn. Yes. So like when we did a chorus line, I'd never danced in heels before. And so they were like, all right, you need to dance in 2.5-inch character heels. Wow. And I was like, I'm a clumsy person. I don't know how this is going to work out. So learning that. And then when we did Little Mermaid, having to learn how to heely. They basically are tennis shoes with wheels on the heels.
Oh, really?
So having to essentially roller skate on your heels. Well, I've never roller skated in my life. I was that one kid that avoided roller rink parties. That was always me.
And you had to learn that too?
And I had to learn. And it was kind of one of those things where they you don't really have a choice. You either learn it or they find somebody else who will.
Wow.
So I remember, especially for Little Mermaid, when I had to learn how to Heeley, I was terrified because I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And the rehearsal process typically is 2 to 3 weeks. 2 weeks of learning music and blocking and dancing.
Right.
And then you have a week of tech, and then you open that weekend. So I thought, I don't know when I'm going to learn how to roller skate.
Yeah.
So I remember I would be in the practice room. I'd go hours before anybody got there, and I would get a rolly chair.
Right.
And I would hold on to it, and I would push off and try to learn how to do it. And I've had my fair share of embarrassing moments of falling and busting it, but it's...
Gosh. But it's amazing what you don't know is that all of the things you're having to learn, like you're having to learn whole new trades and new skills to be able to play a part.
Absolutely.
And so you're constantly learning. No telling by the time you do this, you do this long enough, 30 years now, you'll be a jack of all trades.
Oh,
maybe
exactly.
a master of all of them.
There's no telling. And when we did Beauty and the Beast,
I
have a terrible fear of heights, and they wanted me to fly for that show as the Enchantress in the opening scene.
Yep.
And then they wanted to give me, I learned how to use pyrotechnics, and it's a little, almost like a little wristwatch, if you will, but it's a component to shoot fire out of your wrist. And I remember thinking, you are giving me fire, and you're making me fly.
Set the place on fire.
I was like, oh my gosh. And we ended up cutting the flying because of some technical reasons, but they gave me the fire and learning how to set fire and not catch your hand on fire and learning those safety things. And for Grease, they gave me a baton and we're like, all right, you need to twirl the baton to play this part.
Had you ever done that before?
I'd never touched a baton. I was throwing it around like something crazy. So it was learning these new trades every time.
Victoria, that's the crazy thing about it, though, is I didn't think about all that you have to learn just to do the part. And the part you're playing to learn all that, it takes all that time to learn it. It may not be but 2 minutes anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's only 2 minutes per trade you learn. And it's funny because they love to throw these little things at you and see how you respond.
Yeah.
I was at an audition last weekend, actually, in Tennessee, and I went in and I prepared the music, and they told me I could just do a 32-bar cut of something, and I went in, and the musical director said, actually, we'd like for you to sing the whole song. Oh. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn it real quick. So having to learn it and then giving.
Yeah, and when they throw you the curve then, like they don't tell you that in advance. So you walk in and they'd say, okay, here's a change of plan.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things too that took some learning was definitely knowing that you've got to be overly prepared. Yeah. And not just bring the music that they tell you to sing. Bring your whole songbook. Yeah. So if they say, I've been in several auditions where they've said, okay, that's great, but can you give me a pop musical theater song? Can you give me a golden age musical theater song? Can you give me a decade song? And you've got to just be able to pull it out of your pocket. Yeah. And even at that same audition, they gave me some sides to read for a cold read. They'll give you scenes. And on one of them, they said, okay, great, can you do a British accent? Oh. And I remember thinking, I've never done any type of accent in my life. So I go out, and my fiance was waiting in the green room for me. And they said, we'll give you a few minutes to look it over, and then we'll call you back in. And I went out there. I said, okay, they said British accent. Stay calm. And he's like, you got that. And I was practicing, and he was like, hey, babe, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but you're doing Australian. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, this is not going to go well.
Now, how did you learn to get British?
So I started Googling, and I said, all right, I got like 10 seconds. Right. So I started Googling some words and would just listen to them through my iPhone of how they would enunciate things. Right. And for this particular type of British accent, they don't say their R's. And so learning how to do that, and luckily Ethan was right there, and he was like, yep, you're doing good. Yes, just keep repeating that. So I'd go back and think about different movies that I've seen too where the accent can relate to the scene. Like, okay, how did they talk? All right, well, let me kind of think about a word that can trigger an accent and come up with it. So it's crazy to think about it, but it went well. So
isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's amazing. You have shown, though, that a person can do almost anything they want to do if they want to do it bad enough.
Right, absolutely.
If there's anything I'm getting out of this, it's here's a girl who's basically saying, here's what I want to do, and here's where I want to go. And all of these things that most people would say, let's quit, it's an obstacle, it's a barrier. You've said, I'm going to press through that and do it anyway.
All right, well, I'm so glad you guys stuck around for part 2 of this podcast episode with Bill and Victoria. And part 3 is coming up soon, the final part of this conversation. And let me tell you, it is one of the best ones out of the 3. You get to hear them talk a little bit about building morale within a team and a cast, and some of the really cool things that she's learned from Bill over the years in his leadership development company, BP Leadership, and the way she's been able to apply it to her acting and in drama and in theater that have really helped her go leaps and bounds farther than what she was before. So I hope you're ready for that one. So stay tuned and alerted for that, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you can stay updated when that podcast releases, as well as those of you out there watching on YouTube, hit the bell so that you can get notified as well. And lastly, go to our website, as always, bpleadership.com. You can stay up to date on all the other cool things that we've got going on here within our BP Leadership team. Thank you again for joining us. We're glad you're here, and remember that this is where real leaders are made.